as of last year, right, we had almost 6.5 lakh Indians who joined foreign universities, right? And that resulted in an outflow of 1,300 crores, 1,300 crore rupees going out to pay for their education.
Students, anyone who has a desire or the ability to get into an institution, fees should not be one of the barriers. None of our Indian institutions are in the top 100 yet. We're in the top 200, but none of them in the top 100 yet. We need to be in the top 50 actually. George, welcome back again. So the topic we are going to talk about is about the foreign universities setting up campuses in India. So just to give a little context about it, the UGC came up with some draft regulations on January 5th, 2023, if I remember the date correctly. So basically, it was an extension of the NEP sort of ways, where the NEP has encouraged foreign universities to come to campus, I mean, to come to India. And this draft regulations are in a way to implement that aspect of NEP. So this decision, though it's still some time to actually see the result of it, but this decision has been met with a lot of optimism. At the same time, has also been met with cynicism as well, right? In fact, after the draft regulations came up, in few days' time, two universities, in fact, the Education Minister of India announced that two universities from Australia, Deakin and Wollongong, they are going to set up their campuses in the Gift City. In Gujarat, the newly built Gift City. And what I have heard is that in the Gift City, these universities can actually transact in their own local currency, right? It's a territory within the country, but then you can have your own rules. I mean, foreign campuses can have their own rules, so they can actually transact in their own currency. So that part is there. But yeah, two universities, Deakin and Wollongong, have already committed that they'll be coming up. For Wollongong, I think they already had a campus in UAE. It might be the second one perhaps, but for Deakin is the first one overseas beyond Australia. So, and there are a lot of universities that are obviously thinking, and there are a lot of talks going on there. But yes, so the point is, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. There are a lot of foreign campuses are coming in, and the foreign campuses, universities have been given a lot of freedom as well as some regulations. For example, they can charge whatever fees they wish to, but quote unquote reasonable. It should be reasonable. What it reasonable means is anybody's guess. Then they can, in terms of the intake of the students, is up to them. However, they have to maintain the same faculty quality as well as the student, whatever entry requirement of the student that they maintain for their parent campuses, that also have to be maintained. So these are some of the guidelines that these universities have, and I think that's fair. I mean, if you're coming there, and also one more thing is the degree should be equivalent to the one that they give in their parent
Home campus. Yeah.
campus, home campus, right? So that should be equivalent. It should be there, right? So so this is a slight bit of context behind this. So why don't you share your perspective on this? What are the things that you see good about it? What are the things you are cynical, or you think that may not work for us? Your take. Floor is
Okay.
open.
Okay, so to start with, I there was one point that I noticed in one of the articles that I was reading, which sort of caught my attention and which I feel is going to be a little tough for them to implement. Now, the requirement is that the faculty members should be placed in India, as in they should be based in India, right? So you cannot have faculty members who are usually maybe for Deakin and Wollongong to be based in Australia, and then they come here when the course is on, they teach like a visiting faculty and then go back. So that is not allowed, right? So that is in some ways trying to ensure that the quality of education is um, not superficial, right? That people are there involved and on campus and available. Therefore, that full interaction happens. That somehow I feel is going to be difficult because if they are going to place expats in India, then it is not going to be very easy to one to convince expats, right? We've had our own share of uh, other institutions, right? The IIMs, ISB especially, right? When it is getting expats here and keeping them on campus in Hyderabad or Mohali, it is not a very easy option, right? And they have to therefore, um, I mean, it costs a lot, right? And it costs a lot, not just financially, in terms of faculty time commitment, work for spouse, all those factors, those come in, and therefore while uh, this regulation allows for a lot of independence as far as the educational institution is concerned, the partner need not be someone who is also in the partner of the faculty member need not be someone who is also in an educational institution, right? So for them, repatriating their funds, etc., those could end up posing problems, and therefore those are things which need to be maybe ironed out, right? But beyond that, I think it's interesting. Um, Another point that I had come across was that, yeah, so we had, as of last year, right, we had almost 6.5 lakh Indians who joined foreign universities, right? And that resulted in an outflow of 1,300 crores, 1,300 crore rupees going out to pay for their educational expenses, right? So somewhere the government has that in mind, that why should we let all that money go out? Let's try to keep some of that in and maybe get some more additional funds also through other foreign students coming in, and therefore keep some money back in India, right? Some percentage of that 1,300 crores can be retained if these foreign universities open their campuses in India. So from that perspective, for the economy, for India, I think it is a good move. From an educational standards perspective, because they have to maintain the same quality as their home institutions. Um, Therefore, from a quality perspective also there should be some increase, but then that is if you are going to assume that we have some major problem, or that um, our current management education in India is not up to date, right? If we are assuming that the management in education in India is not up to date, then the opening of these foreign universities should be a wake up call and should be like putting the management education on steroids and getting them up to date. But I feel somewhere that is not the case. Management education, I cannot talk about STEM, but I mean about science and technology and engineering. But then, at least from a management perspective, I don't think our courses in India at the top institutions are in any way outdated. So therefore, I don't see this move making a huge difference there, right? As far as quality of education is concerned. Two factors. One was, what is the Indian government's view, or why does the Indian government want these foreign universities to open? That was fairly evident, save some of that outflow that's happening, um, bump up the quality of education. Why would these foreign institutions want to open in India? That maybe I'll let you start with. And so I think there are at least three stakeholders: the government, these foreign institutions, and potential students and their families, right? I'll say potential students and their families as one. So at least three stakeholders. There could be a fourth stakeholder, which is the industry. But I've sort of shared some points on the first stakeholder. Let's maybe discuss on the second stakeholder, which are these universities, right? If you feel that's going to give some structure to what we are going to ramble about.
Yes. No, I'll take up from where you left. Maybe I'll just add one point before I talk about the universities. First of all, the first stakeholder, that's the
Mhm.
student. So I see even within students, there are two sections broadly. One section which goes abroad because of the university that they get a chance into, right? The focus is on the brand name, the quality of education. So they go to those universities, right? So the top 50 universities around the world, right? So that's one bunch of students. If they get an alternative in India as well, like which is of equal that level, perhaps they would even choose an Indian institution. For them, what matters more is the quality of education, the brand from which they study. But then there's also a large group of students who go abroad not because of the university that they're going into or the quality of education that they're going to get. They're going there targeting the country in which they want to reside for long. Right? It's more about a settling down strategy for them in a country of their choice. right? So there are students who just focus on a given countries of only US or Canada or Australia, like those are, or UK. Right? So those are the two broad category of students. For the students who go for the quality of education and the brand, I think this is going to be a very viable alternative, provided we have institutions from the top 50 coming up and setting campuses in India. So rather than them spending so much of money going abroad, because there is a settling cost as well, cost of living beyond the tuition fees. So saying even if the tuition fees are pretty much similar at parity of the home campus and the campus that's set in India, but the cost of living, of course, is going to be much lesser for the students if they study in an Indian campus, right? So for them, perhaps that this would make a huge difference. But for the students who are going to those universities based on their intention to settle down, I don't think this decision is going to be any impactful for them, right? So out of the figure that you quoted out, I see it substantial. I don't have the numbers obviously, but then at least I see substantial portion, maybe 30-40% of them would still go abroad. Right, would still go abroad. That's the part of it, right? So this is the about the first takeaway. About the university perspective, uh, I feel in India we still have a lot to go in terms of the education curriculum, and not just in social sciences but also in STEM. I mean, just I'll talk of STEM first, and then maybe I'll come to the social sciences. If you look at STEM also right now, even in the top premier institutions of our country, the core branches are not getting enough students to be filled, right? I mean, by core, I mean civil, chemical, mechanical, civil. Those are the branches. We are not getting enough quality students to fill. Why? For the simple reason that once they pass out, there are not enough takers for them in the industry. That does not mean mechanical, civil, or chemical would die down. It does not mean you still have construction going on, you still have factories, cars coming out. What it essentially means is that the curriculum is not up to the mark or is not updated yet, given in terms of the technology that is being used in the industry. So industry wants people who already have some exposure to the technology that they are using, right? So our curriculum needs to be revised, which I see is still not happening, and as a result, placements are not happening that way. And since that is not happening, students feel at the right at the entry level that these branches do not have much future. So the majority of the focus is more on the computer sciences, the electronics part of it, because those are software-driven. Disciplines. So the upgradation is comparatively easier as compared to a hardware-driven discipline. So that's one point where I feel Indian institutions have to do a lot more. Even in the social sciences, I have always believed in India, it is still a rich kids discipline. I still will, and I'll say that. I mean, it might be slightly controversial, but I feel because social sciences, leave aside say management. Okay, I don't know if you can consider law in social sciences, but for the matter, let's
It
just
is.
consider law and management out of it. But if you talk of any other social sciences, like any other subjects, say anthropology, literature, history, archaeology, right? Archaeology is still okay, but a lot of the subjects do not have a very clear-cut job prospect. Okay, so for a middle income or low middle income kid coming from a middle income, low middle income family, for them what matters is a job after they graduate. I mean, that's the ticket to come out of the present economic condition that they are in right now. As a result, you'll see a lot of people from underprivileged places or underprivileged families or middle income, low and middle income people who do not have a family business or backing to fall back upon. They usually choose streams, STEM or management, where they know there's a chance for getting a good job after this, right? Good, bad does not matter, but there's a chance that they're going to get a job, right? It's a pretty market oriented. These are very market oriented courses, or medical for that matter. But if you talk about social science subjects, usually the more visible option is getting into a faculty job at some places, right? Even the other kind of say jobs, work in NGO or content writing, there are different kinds of jobs, but those are not very prominent and they still are not really proven, right? In India at least. So as a result, if you look at social science universities, a disproportionate number of kids or students who study there come from pretty privileged background, right? So there, I think we need to do a lot better when it comes to social sciences, right? Indian institutions or the Indian industry, the market has still not been able to show a good career prospect if someone chooses a social science subject coming from an underprivileged nation family. So this is one part to it. So I think coming the main point that I was trying to drive home is that Indian institutions have a long way to go in both in STEM and non-STEM, both in social sciences and engineering, medical sciences. That we need to do a lot more in terms of curriculum upgradation. We need to do a lot more in terms of making the students skill ready. Okay, and there I think when these foreign campuses come in, obviously there's going to be a lot of competition for all these universities, especially for private universities, especially there, right? I feel the top premier government institutions are the IITs, the top IITs, the NITs, and some of the private institutions that have made their mark, for example, say an ISB, ABITS, and XLRI, MDI sort of institution, which have made their mark, they will get the students, whatever comes. But I feel for the others, and that's a substantial portion of the Indian education landscape, those universities, especially the private ones, and also the state universities, the central universities bearing, say, a DU sort of university, you will still find a lot of competition. I mean, this universities find a lot of competition when the foreign campuses come in, right? It will be really difficult for them to attract students there. So I think that's another, and especially the universities which are catering to a very premium segment of students, they will find even more competition there because those foreign campuses will be charging really high. Okay, so maybe the state universities sort of might still do well because they do not charge much. Students will still come because not much money to pay. But for the private universities or some of the new age universities that are coming up, they are really charging high fees. They'll be in direct competition with those foreign campuses coming in. But what will also happen is because of this foreign campuses coming in, and I'm assuming these will be like the top universities in the world, with their coming in, somehow, since they'll be intermingling in this education landscape within the country, I see a lot of good things also coming out of it in terms of the knowledge sharing or knowledge transition that happens. A lot of curriculum upgradation will be a lot faster, right? And everyone is going to be on their toes. I feel it's not going to be like I have a setup. We have made a brand for say a couple of decades, so people will come. No, it's not that. You'll still have to upgrade. You have to still. The rankings are going to be even more prominent now. It is very prominent. These are going to be even more prominent. So for universities, especially at the ones which are charging premium fees, they will have to really, really work harder on this. For the other premium institutions, I don't see a challenge for them in the first maybe 5, 7 years, or maybe in the 10 years also. But you never know how things change, right? I mean, no one can be today can sit back and relax.
Complacent.
Yeah, complacent is the word. No one can be complacent. Right? So that's about my take on the second stakeholder and a bit on the first stakeholder. You can take it ahead and also about the third
Okay.
stakeholder.
So, for me, I think for the students, right, which I was considering as the um, so wherever government, those foreign institutions, students, and maybe you covered Indian institutions also, and then industry, right? So let's say we have a five stakeholder framework here, right? So from government, we are fairly sure what is there. For these foreign institutions, also we discussed quite a few things. For the students, right? Now, for students, what you said is true, right? Those who are looking to go abroad to settle, for them it certainly would not make sense, right? They're not getting that visa which allows them to overstay and maybe try to get work there and get placed and settle there, right? So, and which is definitely a very large chunk, right? I've come across enough people joking about this on things like Twitter and Instagram, where someone says I went to college in Canada, thinking that I'll study with a global crowd, and I have 90% of the students from India, and the other 10% are from China, right? So that sort of a scenario does exist abroad. Um, and these students are aware of that. They're still going because they want to go to Canada, right? Or whichever place they are going to. Now, for the students who are actually joining, your point about uh, the career path through social sciences. That is definitely there. It is not a clear path, right? It is not something. These are not professional courses anyway, right? So at an undergrad, if somebody does a BA, what does a person do at the postgrad level, right? Now MBAs are becoming more or less d'un cri, as they say in French, right? In fashion, everyone wants to have an MBA, whatever they might be doing before, right? Now that is one possibility. That's then getting people into the corporate sector, or people, a lot of people I know who did take up social sciences in college, they had the civil services in mind, but then as the civil services lose their attractiveness, somewhere these social, the BA honors people also need clear job definitions, right? Not everyone can get into journalism, if that is one option. Not everyone can do a PhD, right? If that is another option for these social science people. So, somewhere industry relevance of the courses is required, has been often pointed out, and is a problem. But for, which brings up another question. What type of courses are these foreign universities going to be focusing on, right? So, while the campuses have been announced, I don't know if what sort of course, what sort of education are they bringing to India? That, if it has been clarified, I'm not sure about. I could not find that, right? Because if Deakin is coming, and is it going to be offering undergrad courses? Right? If it is undergrad, that's a huge pie. But then Deakin can cater to only maybe a few hundred students, right? Is it a postgrad thing? Are they going to be concentrating on certain key areas only? How much would that actually uh, sort of shake the apple cart? India is such a huge market, right? Uh, there are enough people applying to all. I mean, if you just take the IIMs right now, there are so many IIMs, and still you have all of them going full, right? And you've got so many other institutions, top institutions, which are there, and all of them are still full, and full with admissions, in spite of the fact that the tuition fees have more or less tripled in the past 15 years, right? Um, in spite of all that, there is still a demand. So, from a student's perspective, it gives them another option, right? It just gives them another option, because ultimately the number of people who are interested, or who are applying, versus the number of seats that are available, or versus the number of quality seats that are available, there's a huge difference, right? The number of quality seats is very limited, and there's a huge group, whether it's at undergrad or now even at postgrad level, that people are applying to these seats. So for students, it is definitely a good option, much cheaper, because I think a huge part of the expense of studying abroad is the stay, right? I know someone who's got their child in studying in Netherlands at the undergrad level. The tuition fee is nominal because it's almost state sponsored, right? But then the stay outside is going to cost them almost 12 lakh plus per year, right? Which is almost a lakh a year, a month, right? That's huge. How do people afford that, right? But then if the kid is in India, it would be a fraction of that cost, right, per month, stay and other factors. So you'd have to stay in. That's another interesting thing, right? You open a foreign campus in Gujarat and then tell all the foreign faculty. I don't know if prohibition would be still existing in Gift City, right? Is Gift City beyond the rules of prohibition, or does that still apply at the
I
state
guess
level?
it is. I guess it is. It is
Okay,
being
so
designed. I guess I need to check again, but I guess the design is in such a way that it
okay,
can have
okay.
own. I think even a lot of tax rules and everything might be slightly different for
Uh-huh.
the things. We
Yeah,
have to
tax
check that.
rules wise, I know a lot of difference. As far as financial stuff is concerned, a lot of difference. But then, uh, prohibition is that soft spot, right? Do you allow? Do you not allow at in a avenue enclave inside your own state? So that becomes an interesting point. Coming to the third category, which is or the sorry, the fourth stakeholder, which is the industry. Right. Let me think of some factors around that, and you could continue forward from that. The industry, I think, right now is accepting what is there available in the as output from the Indian education sector. And in this, while my bias would remain towards the management graduates that are going, but STEM also, right? But then somewhere there is, it is also about realizing what sort of a market are these people going into, right? If you have from the engineering courses, if you have students going out into the private sector, and the private sector is composed mostly of the large hirers, at least in the private sector, are composed mostly of these IT companies which are providing IT services, then since the jobs are there, whatever BTech you might do, you end up doing an IT job, because that's where the money is, and that's the only job that you can get, right? So somewhere it is not the education that they've got, but then the skills that they've got out of the education, right? So two different threads there also, right? There is a skill that you're acquiring, which might be enhanced by the education that you got, or it might be self acquired, or it might be based on other skills, right, which you picked up, right? You might have picked up the a skill of logical thinking or logical reasoning, and then that helps you because of some engineering course, but then that helps you approach programming much in a much easier way, right? So that factor also remains. So the education is not just education, but it's also skill plus education. So somewhere these students, criticize our system as much as we may, are being equipped to handle such logical jobs as required for programming. As far as management is concerned, I think our MBA graduates are serving the purpose. They are industry relevant, but the industry is always looking for more. There have been, I agree, there have been a lot of criticism about the fact that um, Indian education is not skill based, right? We've had quite a few people criticizing Indian education on that, but then it also depends on where are you drawing that line of skill, right? Is Are you talking about hard skills? So if you're saying that a graduate from the Indian education system does not have programming skills at the end of their 12 plus 3 years of education, and maybe 12 plus 4 now, is that what you're talking about? Or has the system also been able to put in a sort of logical thinking that the person can now, if that person so wishes, pick up programming at a very short learning curve, right? So somewhere that factor, while I have heard so many people criticize Indian education for one, which is that hard skills, but then there are a lot of other inherent or under the radar type of skills which the Indian education system is incorporating, which is positive, right? So I'm even though I might be wearing saffron today, I'm not always an India shining person, but then I have some serious positive thoughts about the Indian education system, for whatever, for the number of maybe for the amount of students that we are turning over. I think the system is doing a fairly good job. That said, maybe I'll let you speak for some time, because while I focus some more of my thoughts.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll take up from the industry perspective. First, before that, I think that's a good point that you raised, that we also have to see the kind of courses that they are coming up with, and also at which level are they coming up with? Is the undergrad or the postgrad? I presume they might want to start with undergrad, and the reason being that's a bigger pie, and with all the cost that's going to be incurred by them while they set it up. They have to. I mean, it has to be a viable model as well, right? So they have to. I mean, undergrad is the way for them to get that cost incurred. And at a postgrad level, much less number of people get in. And once someone gets into a postgrad level, it's not really a function of the country that they want to get in. I mean, yes, I mean it is. I'm not saying it's not completely, but I think people who are going for postgrad, most of the times it is about the kind of career they wish to, right, get in. Based on that, they make the decision. That's one. If that is not the decision and someone is still going abroad, then it's usually for to settle there, right? So all these universities coming to set up campuses here, I think the undergrad serves them better, also from a very cost structure perspective, right? They have a bigger pie, they can. Yeah, you want to
I,
say?
in fact, I think very strongly on the other, right? I
Okay.
feel very strongly that, in fact, from a postgrad level, they would be more attractive because one, it is going to be very difficult for them to set up a university of
Mm.
such a large scale, right?
Right.
So soon. So to s- to start off, I think they might start more with postgrad because postgrad is more manageable, right? Because it would be a 1 year, 2 year program, the number of courses being limited, therefore your faculty requirement is also limited. You can't suddenly hire for a very large number and then realize, okay, we are not getting admissions or whatever, or that there are other red tape issues and therefore we can't manage, right? There would be, I'm pretty sure, while all this seems rosy, in the next 5 years, we'll see some universities opening campuses and then packing up and going also, right? So I don't see it as a very easy path. So postgrad seems like a more easily chewable pie, right? These people are not going to be looking at numbers. Therefore, undergrad, the large numbers that are there in undergrad might not be exactly um, the low hanging fruit that they're looking for. Postgrad might be the more manageable thing that, okay, limited number of students, limited faculty, limited investment. Let's try this out. I mean,
Okay,
just my
well,
personal
I,
perspective.
I I think to me what it appears, I think they will have both, but the focus will be more on the undergrad courses. I feel that way as of now. I mean, there are say 5 undergrad courses, there might be 2 postgrad. As of now, I feel that because that's where the numbers are going to come from.
So,
Right. That's what I feel. But then again, coming back to that point of where you say that some universities might back up, if these are really big brands, big universities coming up here, if they pack up and go, it's a blot both on the country and also on the university. I mean, it has to be on the regulatory mechanism as well. So, because these are not going to be just any other university who are going to be allowed. So, I think that's one scenario. All the stakeholders will have to, especially the university themselves and the government or or we as a country, need to ensure that that does not happen. The entry requirement might be can be more stringent, or they might take more time before really making up their mind, understanding all the rules and everything. But once that comes, irrespective of the government of the day, that should not happen. I think that is going to be a big concern, because till now what I've seen is that whenever a university or institution sets up a new campus anywhere, usually it goes on well. I mean, be it Singapore is a very good destination where many universities set up. UAE has become normal, and there are other this also. But I'm seeing this campus have really done well as of now, and they're here for the long haul. Okay, because ultimately it's not another market. Yes, it is a market, but it's not like for-profit business kind of market. It does not make sense. So, I mean, we're not getting our business all right, so we're not earning money from it. So we'll wind up and launch somewhere else. And education institution runs in a different way, right? An education institution, I mean, brand is the currency that they rely on. It's, I mean, today if you have a brand, you can, for example, take any top IM or take any top IIT, take away all the people from there, and just put anyone. Yet the institution will function like this. The same companies will come, students will come, right? But if you say that for a company, for example, take a Google or a Microsoft, and you take away all the great leaders of the company and the engineers and everyone, you'll see the stock price plummeting, right? And the company might just be gone in a day, right? So that's the huge difference between a company, a for-profit company, and an education institution, right? I mean, it's just a company is about the people, the process that they have. If you take them away, the company is gone. Institution is about the brand that you make. Once you made the brand, it does not matter who is there. It's still going to have a currency, unless it really does something over the years. That's it. But again, once you build a brand, destroying the brand for an educational institution also takes a lot of time. So that's the currency. So I mean, that is one aspect, I think, where education institution, whichever is coming to India or any other country, would not think of short-term thing. It has to be a long term. It cannot be like, let's test the water and see. I don't think that can be one way. But from an industry perspective, coming back to the other stakeholder that we talked of, I think it's a great thing for the industry that will come up, right? Because a lot of companies now are also realizing the importance of having social science graduates beyond management, beyond law, right? In different creative roles. in different other kinds of roles. They're seeing they are also appreciating different people having social sciences objective perspective as well, and that's one of the reasons why even the IITs have started emphasizing more on the social science subjects. Right. So even if these institutions come up with STEM or say social sciences, does not matter. If the quality is really good, and since they will come with a brand equity already, I think for industry this will be another. They'll have few more options to go and hire there. Okay, ultimately, industry they do not care about the brand; they care about the human resource that they get from there. The brand of the university just gives them the credibility that yes, you are more likely to get a much more valuable resource if you come to this premium institution. So that's the reason industry go there. So I think it's a great thing for them. For them, there's nothing to lose for the industry, right? That's the point. But they have a lot to gain if it really works out. But one of the things that the critics or the cynics have been pointing out of this about this move is that it is uh, going to make education a for-profit business in a way, right? The argument is that in India, at least, education is still not for profit. Okay, but if these universities come in, and these are going to be private universities, the top Ivy Leagues are all private, they are going to make it for-profit businesses in a way, right? So, and that essentially means every other institution in India is also going to look for that. Okay, and now with government funding decreasing in the education space, a lot of the top IITs and the IIMs are becoming self-sustainable. So that is also one of the reasons why the fees have really tripled in many cases. That's one of the reasons because they need to be self-sustainable. So with all these campuses, universities coming in, okay, that's another risk that the space that education might become for profit, and if it happens, it's perhaps will take away a lot of underprivileged kids or who may not be able to afford that kind of premium education. For them, it might be a problem, right? So I think that's one point we need to ensure that as a country, if education is not for profit, it should stay not for profit, and I think education should stay not for profit. Okay, that should not be the idea. I mean, yes, we need to keep it moving, to keep the entire organization moving. You need money, you need surplus, but then the focus should be more on endowments and all the other ways through which you can bring, but rather than charging high fees, because once you do that, you are automatically what do you call automatically putting off many of the meritorious students. You're automatically putting off many of the students who would have really benefited from the kind of premier education you're giving, right? Yeah.
Okay. I mean, let's just casually delve into that, and I also
Yes.
want to get my thoughts clear. Uh, Sometimes, somehow, I feel that uh, does that argument actually hold weight? Because is so. Let's take the current situation of ISB, or let's say Deakin opens a B school at their gift campus, right? So, is that underprivileged child going to lose something if the MBA at Gift is very high priced and that child is not able to go there? There
Mhm.
are a number of other institutions. Was the child's future dependent only on that institution? Let's say that the top 100 institutions in India are all um, profit making, right? Is
Mhm.
that underprivileged child limited that the child's future is dependent only on education from those 100 profit making institutions? Is that 101st institution which that person can afford not going to be enough for that person? I somehow feel that
Okay, I'll
while huh,
I'll just answer that before you listen. You're right. If child's future is not dependent on those 100 top institutions, if they're profitable, provided they're charging really high fees. But what I feel is that if someone from the underprivileged background would have gone into those institutions, okay, the exposure that they would have got, okay, and the kind of opportunity that they've got, they might have made some wonders out of the life. It's not that they will not make, right? Again, it's a game of probability because we are a function of the environment that we reside in. So once you get that kind of exposure, it's not just good for you, it's also good for the society, it's also good for the community, it's also good for the country, right? So the point is, yes, education requires money, but then there are a lot of other ways to make money other than student fees. That's what I'm saying, right? You can, because today, see, if as a society we decide that education, a student fee should not be the main source of revenue for an institution, you will have a lot of stakeholders, say businesses, the CSR arms of different businesses will have, the endowments of the alumni that will be there. Maybe you can also ask for government loans. There can be, I mean, is that the ecosystem together have to decide. The industry, the government, all the other stakeholders have to together decide that let not students be burdened by the fees. Let us ensure that anyone who has the ability to get in, let them get in, because it's also good for the institution. Because once we have really good students and financial background is not a barrier for them to get into your place, once you bring them here, everyone will know that you have great people, great students coming here. So everyone will want to help you in that regard. More companies will come in. So you will have your brand. And once you have a brand, you want. I mean, that's exactly the model the Ivy Leagues really did. I mean, all the top institutions in the world, these are private universities, but yes, they charge high fees, especially for foreign students. That's there. But there are a lot of scholarships as well. So anyone who has ability, the scholarships in a way takes care of it. They need to do a lot more, but they are trying. I mean, there's a conscious effort that they do. I think so. What I mean here is that a child's future is not dependent on the kind of institution they go. It's not. But if you allow a child to get the exposure, right, based on merit, right, they can do wonders, which is going to be good for everyone. So that's the reason I feel, as in society, we need to find different ways. I mean, this is a problem. Ultimately, it's a problem that we need to crack, and business is all about that. I mean, when there's a problem, we need to crack it. I think in the
Find
education also,
solutions.
right, in the
Right.
education also, we need to solve the problem that how can we have different sources of revenue for an university other than student fees, right? So I think that's one thing, if we can crack, and great institutions will do it. Today, as government is cutting down on funding, a lot of the public universities are trying to crack that, and they will do it for sure. Because if some universities have been able to do it in the West or in other places, why not? Why can't we do it? Right?
So
It can be done.
Harvard has such a large endowment fund
I think billions of dollars, I think
rivals.
12 to $15 billion of endowment every year,
Yes,
sort of thing, right?
true.
So it's a huge. I mean, the point is, if anyone is meritorious, I mean, they will get it. There's the point. So everyone
Mm.
who thinks of Harvard actually can get an undergrad from underprivileged. So that is possible. We need to do that here as well, right? So I think coming back to the points, I think we were talked of industry. It's, I think, for the industry has nothing to lose. These campuses, once they come in, they will obviously, to answer the cynicism, it's a valid one that it might start treating education as not for profit. I think this is something that as a society we need to ensure that it stays not for profit, and students, anyone who has a desire or the ability to get into an institution, fees should not be one of the barriers to that. That's, I mean, if you can just crack this, rest of it will take care, right? Other than this, one of the other cynicism that I have heard is like, the point is like, why are we bringing foreign campuses here? Why can't we allow or focus more on our Indian institutions and allow them to thrive through regulatory mechanisms, or or otherwise? Why can't we ensure that our Indian institutions go up to that level rather than bringing them here? Okay, which again I don't know if it has merit, but then the way I look at it is, for any industry to really develop, you need some strong players, right? I mean, any industry that you talk of, right? For example, for a long duration of time, we had been protecting our local domestic industries. We still do in many parts, right? We have been protecting our domestic industries. So once it opens up globalization, then everyone becomes more competitive. Right? I think here also there's a chance that we might become more competitive as an education landscape. Right? And it's great that top institutions are coming, because they are at the top of the game, and that's the reason why they are there. Since for a long time we still have not been able to cross the 100 mark, the top. None of our Indian institutions are in the top 100 yet. We're in the top 200, but none of them in the top 100 yet. We need to be in the top 50 actually, right? So if we want to crack that, I mean, we have Singapore, such a small country, two major
China.
universities. China is there. I mean, China is still a big country with all the resources. I'm saying of Singapore, right? Just two big universities. I mean, there are hardly three or four universities. Out of them, two are consistently in the top 15. right? And US and non-young. If they
Yeah,
can do it, why can't we do it with all the resources that we have? In terms of resources, we have more resources than Singapore. Per capita income might be less because of the population and everything. But the point is, we have more resources as a country, much larger economy than those other countries. So why can't we do it? I think there the answer is with these universities coming, we should find out ways how can we collaborate, what do we learn from them, and how do we crack that. How do we get to the top 50? Because once we do that, it's not just great for our students, it's also great for the country because a lot of foreign students might also be interested in coming and taking up an education in India. Right, which also means a lot of intermingling of culture and ethos, exposure for everyone. Right? I mean, which is important today in a globalized world, right?
true.
So I think that's what I believe in. That's one cynicism. I mean, there's a couple of
Okay.
cynicism that they're yeah. But yeah, your take, please go ahead.
There was just a thought crossing my mind. They say, right, if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a meal or a day at least. Teach a man to fish, and he won't stay hungry ever in his life, right? So somewhere I was just thinking, where when we are talking about bringing such institutions, if the idea behind that is to increase the standard of education in India, somewhere I think government should also have some policy of getting Indian faculty also trained abroad, right? If that is possible, right? If that is done in a proper systematic way, right? If you have faculty getting trained abroad and them under contract to come back to India, right? It's not that that should be their ticket to move out, but then if they train abroad and then they come back in India, wouldn't that be a much more sustainable model of education for India than looking uh, for something that sounds very PR-ish, which is foreign universities to open campuses in India. Other than that, if Indian faculty were to train abroad, I think that would have been a much more sustainable
No,
long-term.
I'll just come here. Uh, is it really the problem? So, I mean, with this thing that can't Indian faculty be trained abroad? So, the assumption that perhaps you're making is that the problem is the quality of faculty in India.
No, no,
I don't.
not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm my first thing in the initial part of the conversation was that our faculty are already delivering fairly world class, right?
Yeah.
How do you make them even better if there is something lacking which the foreign universities have, right? Then getting the faculty up to speed and making maybe this sort of transition or that mobility of the faculty possible, I think that would be a um, more fundamental solution to increasing faculty quality if there is any question, right? I'm saying if there is a
But
question.
the point is like even if you take the faculty, so that they would perhaps okay saying that yes we have great faculty in the country, that's there, right? I mean especially the premium institutions, that's there. There's no doubt on that. But the point is, even if we take them abroad for exposure, which is great, I mean that will really help them. But a lot of the problems that Indian education system has is more systemic. It's more systemic. It's the way the system has been made, the curriculum and everything, right? So individual faculty upskilling is obviously necessary, but that would not help solve the systemic issues. Those systemic issues can be solved when you look at them in a systemic way, and that can happen once we bring those. For example, if we're really bringing them here, we have to learn from their systems. We have to learn what they do that keeps them ahead of the curve, right? Or we might want to go to those universities in their home campuses and actually observe how what they do. We can collaborate on those fronts. I mean, those are the ways which many Indian universities are doing actually, but we need a lot more universities doing it. Actually, looking at it at a systemic level, because the problem that we have in India in terms of education at all levels is more systemic. Right? You have individual brilliances who, with the same concept, I mean, for a given concept, will really appeal to the students in the way they explain and everything, right? That's there, that's not an issue. The issue is that how do we give a holistic education to our students, right? So that they are more evolved individuals and they just don't focus, say, only on jobs or have only one narrow-minded outlook towards life, right? It's more about holistic giving the exposure, and that thing can only be achieved through systemic changes, and that's where I think as a system we are lacking.
I agree on that. I agree on that. Um, I think systemic changes are required, and I think changes are required at multiple levels, right? From content perspective, from the pedagogy perspective, from basic systems of like when I was in DU, I did not attend my convocation because after the results came out, convocation happened, God knows when, and it's such a huge crowd that, uh, well, I never just followed up, right? And I got busy in other stuff. Why should that be, right? There can be, I mean, I'm just pointing out a very minuscule thing which is immaterial for most people, but then even something like that, right? Why should, if present university system is suffering from problems of administration, that also is something that needs to be addressed, and which I guess the foreign universities would have addressed in their home markets, and they should be able to bring that, right? If there is a requirement for efficiency, efficiency has to come in from all quarters. It can't be just efficiency in the classroom, right? You're super efficient in the classroom, but then outside the classroom the student struggles with other things. It's not going to make the learning effective at all. Okay, one last stakeholder that I wanted to bring in, and maybe we could comment on, are the faculty members themselves, right? How is the opening of these foreign universities going to affect faculty members in India, right? Is it going to make the market more competitive, or is it going to be okay? Um, they are in a certain part of the country and they're going to stay there. It does not affect mobility. It does not affect faculty in India at all. It is, what do you see?
I see for the kind of university that you're talking about who are going to come to India, they have very high faculty requirements, the very stringent guidelines about the faculty, which essentially means for the faculty who are serving in the premier institutions of the country, for them the options have opened up. The ones who are just serving the premier institutions of the country, for them the options have opened up. But for the large majority who are not in that bandwagon, okay, they might be individually really brilliant in terms of the way they teach, or maybe the kind of research they do. But just by the fact that they are not teaching in the top institutions per se, for them those doors might not be open. Okay, and also a lot of those institutions will also bring their faculty from their home countries as well and from other countries as well, because they were, because one of the things that they have is that they want a global audience, sort of, right? Different people from different countries coming together. I mean, that's the reason why the Western education is so developed, because it's people from different countries, different cultures coming up, intermingling, and then creating knowledge, creating intellectual pursuits. Uh, for the faculty of India, I say the premier institutions will have more options opening up. It's a different matter whether they'll actually join or not. But for the rest of it, I don't think much. Right? However, I find that overall in the system, because of these institutions coming up, for example, you have a university setting up in Gujarat. So obviously there will be the other institutions in the state or even in the country as well. They will hear about them because students, there's going to be intermingling, right? There'll be institutional visits and all of those. So because of this intermingling, I think overall, even the institutions which are not that premier right now in the country, their overall level might come up, provided they have that willingness to do. Okay, I mean, an education institution sitting in Australia, really understanding the system sitting here in India is difficult. But now we have the same institutions coming up and setting up their campus in India itself, in an Indian state. So now it's much easier to visit them, to actually learn from them, to collaborate with them, to sign MOUs and all of those. So I think overall, maybe some of the faculties will get visiting opportunities. Some of the faculty from those institutions will be brought to different universities within the country, and there will be a lot of exchange of ideas that can happen. A lot of research, collaborative research. Will happen a lot easily now as compared to before. So I think overall for the system is great, but if you talk of just faculty members, I think premium institution faculty will have a lot more options opening up. For the rest, I doubt whether that's still a possibility. Yeah. Your
Sure.
take, and maybe we can wind up with this last thought. Yes.
Well, I think I agree with that. Ultimately, the scale of these institutions, these foreign institutions coming in, is going to be um, so small that it is going to be a small fraction of students who would be affected, a very small fraction of faculty would be affected, but still the mere presence, right? Sometimes the mere presence is enough for overall development, right? Just the mere presence. And even if they're taking away a very small percentage of students, the fact that they are maybe taking away a certain percentage, that'll make the people, the rest, sit up and see, okay, there are improvements to be done, there are processes that we can adopt, and overall it should have that positive um, runoff into the rest of the system. My I just taught a course on marketing strategies for emerging markets, and in that, one of the case studies I looked at was the Metro case study, right? Metro cash and carry. Uh, Very successful at multiple places, right? Russia, China, very successful. But in India, it was struggling. And now we know that it is moving out of the country and Reliance is coming in, right? So, th- which is why I had all that cynicism when I was talking uh, about the entry of these foreign institutions. I hope it is for the long run, right? 10 years. They've got that initial permission for 10 years. I hope they are staying for more, right? And that it makes sense, and then that they are able to make that change. Even whatever time Metro spent in India, it was able to change the system, right? Just the mere presence. I- it would have been much more effective had it had all the, I mean, if it had all the permissions to purchase from farmers directly, it would have been able to actually make an impact. It did not get those permissions. There were limitations, regulations, but it, whatever time it was there, it did make the system that much more effective. And I think similar thing is going to happen in education also. Whether they stay or not, that's a long term thing that we'll get to know in 10 years. But the fact that they are going to come into India is going to have several positive after effects for the entire system, and which I am looking forward to.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just hope that this policy change will bring in lot of positive changes in the education system. Because one thing is for certain that we need to transform the system yet. That we need to, right? I mean, barring a few institutions, the top institutions, overall the quality of education in the country is really, I mean, and it's a lot to do with the systemic problem. It's not really individual, say faculty or this. I mean, there are systemic problems. I mean, if system changes, a lot of the quality will also change of the people. The requirements will change, and I think hopefully with this foreign campuses coming up with a lot more exposure that Indian education system is going to get, we just hope that a lot more skilled work people come in the workforce and stay in India, work for the country. Okay, and also the education system overall in the country goes up, right? That's something we'll have to see. Maybe I think next 10, 15 years will actually show us the tangible results of this, whether this move was successful or not. Okay, so thank you so much, George. I think with this we can wind this episode. We will be back
Okay.
again with another interesting topic.
Okay, I'd like to wind up with open thought, right?
Sure.
I got this mail from the Ken today about their article today, which is about can ISB pull off what HBS did, right?
Mhm.
In that, the last line says, for the year ended June 2022, the revenue Harvard Business School derived from HBS Online was $74 million compared to $137 million that it made from its traditional on-campus MBA programs, right? So somewhere online is almost 50% of their offline, their on-campus programs, right? So now in that scenario, are campuses in India going to be that relevant? I think we've discussed why they're going to be relevant. And I have my very personal biased opinions of why online has its issues, but that is just some food for thought. Maybe whoever's going to watch our
I think I think
episodes can think on.
those numbers are also a function of the brand of Harvard.
True.
It's not just the quality that they're getting; it's a Harvard brand. So, and even an online certificate from Harvard makes sense. People can,
LinkedIn.
yeah, people can learn. We have to see for a much lesser known brand whether that's happening, what those numbers are, right? But
True,
anyway, sir,
true.
this is something we can always discuss again. Thank you so much, George, for this. We'll see
Thank
again
you.
in another episode.
Yes.